The progress bar on the external drive displayed 99%. I was standing in the dimly lit study of my childhood home. I was 25 years old and living in San Francisco. My name is Elias Thorne. I was a senior machine learning researcher specializing in predictive algorithmic modeling. I was transferring my final doctoral thesis to a secure physical server. The file was exactly 4.2 gigabytes of dense neural network architecture. My father walked into the room wearing his tailored Brooks Brothers suit. He smelled heavily of expensive scotch and manufactured superiority. He looked at the glowing monitor with utter disdain. He told me my academic pursuits were a complete waste of time. He said I should be working at his traditional accounting firm. He said real men balance physical ledgers instead of chasing digital ghosts. I did not argue or attempt to explain the vector embeddings. I simply watched his hand move toward the primary power strip. He pulled the heavy black cord directly from the wall socket. The screen went completely black in a fraction of a second. The sudden power loss corrupted the localized solid-state drive instantly. 3 years of complex cryptographic research vanished into the void. He smiled and told me I was finally free to get a real job. He called my thesis absolute garbage that would never generate a single dollar. Before we go any further into this file, I need to ask you a quick question. Where are you listening to this story right now, and what time is it? Drop your city and the time in the comments below. I did not scream or throw my hands in the air. I immediately assessed the catastrophic data loss with complete analytical detachment. The local partition table was structurally obliterated beyond standard recovery protocols. The hardware damage alone was approximately $1,400. The loss of the intellectual property was fundamentally incalculable. My father thought he was teaching me a harsh lesson about reality. He believed he was correcting a severe defect in my professional trajectory. He did not know the core repository was securely backed up. It was encrypted on a remote server located in a redundant data center. He simply accelerated my departure from his toxic ecosystem. I calmly packed my specialized mechanical keyboard into my leather satchel. The initial variables for his future destruction were successfully logged. The architecture of our family dynamic was built on complete subordination. My father operated his boutique accounting firm like a ruthless feudal kingdom. He demanded absolute loyalty and extracted unpaid labor as a standard tax. For 7 consecutive years, I functioned as his unpaid information technology department. I managed the entire network infrastructure for his 12 senior executive partners. I maintained their legacy database systems that ran on outdated server hardware. I spent countless weekends patching critical security vulnerabilities in their obsolete software. He never understood the sheer complexity of the architecture I maintained. He viewed this highly specialized technical labor as a basic filial obligation, so he never compensated me for the thousands of hours I spent coding. A standard corporate network consultant would charge $220 hourly. I saved him roughly $85,000 annually in operational costs. He repaid this massive financial subsidy with constant psychological degradation. He frequently belittled my algorithmic research during mandatory Sunday family dinners. He told his wealthy golf partners that I was just playing with computers. He claimed I lacked the aggressive business acumen required for real corporate success. His manipulation relied entirely on a carefully constructed system of financial guilt. He frequently reminded me that he paid for my initial undergraduate tuition. That initial state university degree cost exactly $42,300. So he used that specific dollar amount as a permanent psychological weapon against me. Whenever I attempted to set professional boundaries, he deployed the same emotional algorithm. He would loudly calculate his total financial investment in my biological existence. He would then demand immediate compliance as a return on his capital. He constructed a reality where my technical expertise was considered entirely worthless. He needed me to believe I was fundamentally incapable of independent survival. He relied on my free labor to keep his aging firm technologically viable. His accounting software required constant manual database indexing just to function properly. I rebuilt their corrupted digital data tables almost every single Friday night. I was the silent engine keeping his lucrative business from a catastrophic failure. So I accepted the verbal abuse because I was quietly harvesting structural operational data. I was systematically analyzing the fundamental flaws in his entire traditional business model. My thesis was directly engineered to automate and replace his entire archaic industry. I was building my future empire directly from his deliberate ignorance. The core digital infrastructure of my father's traditional accounting firm was a very fragile ecosystem. He firmly believed the business operated on his sheer aggressive willpower alone. He did not know I personally designed the entire hybrid cloud architecture. I was the sole global administrator for their Microsoft Active Directory environment. This system controlled every single login credential for his 73 employees. He thought the heavy metal server rack in the closet ran itself. He never realized I wrote customized Python scripts to automate their daily backups. These scripts ran quietly at 2 in the morning to prevent data corruption. I managed the automated data pipelines that fed his daily financial dashboards. His firm relied entirely on a highly customized enterprise resource planning software. The license for this specialized software cost $18,500 annually. My father assumed this cost was automatically deducted from the corporate operations account. He was completely unaware that the software vendor required a certified technical sponsor. I registered the master license under my own personal developer credentials 3 years ago. I possessed the root cryptographic keys required to access the central client database. I held the supreme administrative privileges over every single piece of corporate data. My unseen labor extended deep into their external client communications network. I personally configured the secure socket layer certificates for their client portal. This encryption protocol ensured their high net worth clients could upload sensitive tax documents safely. If those specific digital certificates expired, the entire client web portal would immediately shut down. Modern web browsers would block all traffic and display a severe security warning. I manually renewed these critical security certificates every 90 days using my personal laptop. I paid the nominal $80 renewal fees completely out of pocket. My aggressive father treated his fragile corporate network like a magical utility that never failed. He took my invisible structural support completely for granted every single day. He mocked my technical expertise while his entire legacy firm rested in my hands. My technical arsenal was definitely not built with raised voices or emotional outbursts. My arsenal was constructed from root passwords and top-tier administrative access. I controlled the domain name registry for his primary corporate website. I owned the exact digital territory where his entire financial empire was built. I was quietly holding the master kill switch to his entire professional corporate existence. The catalyst for my administrative severance occurred on a Tuesday at 1400 hours. I was sitting in my San Francisco apartment, reviewing a complex algorithmic deployment. My cellular device vibrated with an incoming call from my father. I answered the call and placed the phone flat on my glass desk. He did not say hello or ask about my physical health. He demanded I fix a critical routing error on his Exchange server. His senior partners were losing thousands of dollars in billable hours. He stated my computer hobbies needed to wait until his problem was solved. I did not argue with his aggressive corporate entitlement. I opened my encrypted terminal and logged into his legacy network architecture. I utilized a virtual private network to mask my location. I was not logging in to repair his completely broken digital infrastructure. I was logging in to execute a permanent administrative withdrawal. I started with the primary enterprise resource planning software master distribution license. I navigated to the central vendor portal and located the active subscription associated with his firm. I executed a hard digital transfer of the master license back to my personal corporate entity. The accounting software running on his local servers immediately transitioned into a heavily restricted trial mode. The system locked all 73 employees out of their critical historical financial client databases. Next, I methodically addressed the hybrid cloud infrastructure hosting their external client web portal. I accessed the Amazon Web Services Management Console using my Supreme Root security credentials. I isolated the specific Elastic Compute Cloud instances, rendering his secure client data dashboards. I did not delete the virtual servers, because that would be a malicious digital action. I then simply transferred the billing administrative rights directly to his personal corporate email address. I removed my personal credit card from the automated monthly payment gateway completely. The cloud provider would suspend his server services exactly at midnight for lack of payment. The final step required severing his primary digital domain name resolution protocols. I logged into the domain registrar, holding the legal rights to his main corporate website. I changed the authoritative name servers back to the basic default domain parking status. His custom corporate email addresses would completely stop routing incoming network messages within 48 hours. His wealthy clients would receive a standard server failure notification when trying to contact his firm. I completed the digital uncoupling sequence in exactly 11 minutes and 40 seconds. I closed the main terminal window and deleted my secure shell access keys. I picked up my cellular device from the surface of my glass desk. My father was still yelling into the microphone about his frozen database tables. He demanded to know exactly how long the technical repair would take. I calmly informed him that his free technical trial period had officially expired. I hung up the phone and blocked his number on my personal device. The systemic severance was flawlessly executed without a single emotional reaction. The fallout from the digital severance manifested exactly 16 minutes after midnight. I was monitoring the automated traffic logs on a secondary encrypted monitor. The Amazon Web Services billing cycle triggered the immediate suspension of his Elastic Compute instances. His entire firm lost access to their active client portal simultaneously. I watched the localized server requests spike dramatically to 4,000 pings per second. The legacy database systems were desperately searching for an authorization token that no longer existed. At 8:14 the next morning, my father bypassed my cellular block. He used the firm's analog landline to circumvent my basic communication filters. He left a highly erratic voicemail lasting exactly 3 minutes and 12 seconds. His vocal cadence was aggressive, but laced with underlying systemic panic. He ordered me to immediately restore the master software license to his local servers. He threatened to file a catastrophic civil lawsuit against my personal tech firm. He claimed my malicious interference caused a loss of $92,000. I documented the audio file and saved it to an external solid-state drive. I categorized the recording under potential legal evidence for corporate extortion. I did not return his phone call or acknowledge his ridiculous legal threats. His aggressive tactics were entirely predictable within his established behavioral framework. He firmly believed he could scream a digital security certificate back into existence. 2 hours later, my mother attempted a completely different psychological infiltration tactic. She sent a lengthy text message utilizing deep emotional manipulation parameters. She claimed my father was experiencing severe cardiovascular distress due to my extreme selfishness. She stated his systolic blood pressure had spiked to 160. She demanded I stop this pathetic technological tantrum and respect my biological family. She reminded me of the $42,300 spent on my tuition. She expected this specific financial trigger to initiate my immediate emotional compliance. I read her message twice to analyze the exact structural components of her gaslighting. She completely ignored the fact that my father had destroyed my doctoral thesis. She demanded blind loyalty while offering absolutely zero functional respect for my boundaries. I drafted a very short and clinically detached response on my mobile device. I informed her that emergency medical situations require certified paramedics, not network administrators. I advised her to dial 911 if his cardiovascular distress was legitimate. I then permanently blocked her phone number from my digital communication network. The panic was spreading rapidly through their entire established power hierarchy. They were finally realizing the structural foundation of their dominance was a complete illusion. My father could not bully the locked database tables into releasing his financial data. His aggressive screams were utterly useless against a mathematical cryptographic wall. The digital trap was holding perfectly steady under their immense emotional pressure. He simply could never manipulate the raw compiled binary code. The exact structural parameters for his absolute professional destruction were now securely locked firmly in place forever. The foundation of any structural demolition requires precise mathematical certainty. I did not rely on their erratic emotional behavior to build my defensive perimeter. Human memory is highly volatile and easily manipulated by aggressive gaslighting tactics. I relied exclusively on the immutable architecture of the encrypted database backups. I still held the decryption keys for the historical server snapshots from the previous 4 years. I initiated a secure virtual machine on my primary local workstation to analyze the data. I mounted the backup image using a complex cryptographic handshake protocol. The raw database contained over 42 million distinct transaction records, See, I deployed a specialized Python script utilizing natural language processing algorithms. The code was specifically designed to flag anomalous financial routing structures. My father claimed his firm was a pillar of traditional corporate integrity. The automated algorithmic output told a completely different and highly illegal mathematical story. The script identified a repeating pattern of fraudulent expense categorization spanning 40 months. He was systematically abusing Section 179 of the Federal Tax Code. He depreciated luxury personal vehicles as heavy construction equipment for his wealthy clients. He approved the deduction of a $114,000 Porsche 911. The ledger categorized the German sports car as a specialized agricultural transport vehicle. This single transaction constituted a blatant violation of federal tax laws. The digital receipts extended deep into his own personal corporate compensation packages. He maintained a shadow ledger using a dual-entry accounting method hidden within the software. He funneled $382,000 into an offshore holding company. He labeled these massive outbound transfers as basic international consulting fees. The holding company was registered to a post office box in the Cayman Islands. I traced the digital routing numbers directly back to his primary wealth management portfolio. His entire professional superiority complex was funded by documented corporate tax evasion. I compiled this highly sensitive financial telemetry into a comprehensive digital dossier. I exported the raw SQL queries into a strictly formatted comma-separated values document. I secured the entire directory using a 256-bit advanced encryption standard. I transferred the locked payload onto a hardened titanium external solid-state drive. The physical device required a localized biometric thumbprint scan to unlock the encrypted volume. This small titanium rectangle contained the absolute destruction of his 50-year professional legacy. The trap was no longer just a passive administrative network severance. It was now an active and fully weaponized financial compliance snare. I monitored the ongoing server outage through my secondary diagnostic dashboard. My father was currently screaming at outsourced technical support operators in a state of desperate panic. He had no idea the real danger was already successfully extracted and sitting silently on my glass desk. The receipts were fully organized, and the undeniable mathematical proof was completely secured against any future legal challenges. He would soon discover playing with digital ghosts yields devastating real-world consequences. I left my corporate headquarters at exactly 17:30 hours on a Friday. The ambient temperature in the concrete structure was exactly 58 degrees. I walked to my reserved parking space in the subterranean garage, holding my leather satchel. My father was standing next to the driver's side door of my vehicle. My mother was waiting inside his leased BMW sedan. The car was parked illegally across two separate executive parking spaces. He had bypassed the primary security gate using an old proximity badge from my previous apartment. He wore a forced smile that did not reach his eyes. He did not yell or threaten me with civil litigation this time. He deployed a textbook psychological de-escalation strategy designed to feign mutual respect. He held up his empty hands to signal a complete cessation of hostilities. He offered me a formal senior position as the new chief technology officer of his failing traditional firm. He promised a starting salary of $125,000 annually. He said I would finally have a respected real title in the highly competitive corporate world. He called the severe database lockout a brilliant demonstration of my underlying aggressive business potential. Thus, my mother stepped out of the idling luxury vehicle to reinforce his tactical maneuver. She handed me a glossy cardboard box containing expensive artisanal pastries from a local bakery. She said the entire family was completely ready to forgive my temporary lapse in judgment. She claimed my father simply wanted to harness my unique technical skills for the greater good. They desperately needed me to manually restore the localized servers by tomorrow morning. They promised to support my computer hobbies if I reinstated their operational capacity immediately. They believed this pathetic financial offer would secure my absolute compliance and loyalty. I did not accept the cardboard box or validate their artificial maternal warmth. I looked directly at the pulsing blue vein on my father's right temple, saw his resting heart rate was visibly elevated despite his incredibly calm vocal tone. I informed him that my independent technical consulting rate was currently entirely unavailable. I stated that the administrative network severance was permanent and completely legally binding. I firmly told him he urgently needed to migrate his legacy data using his own external technical support resources. I unlocked my personal vehicle using the encrypted digital application running locally on my mobile device. The fabricated truce evaporated the exact second the electronic locks clicked open. My father slammed his heavy palm against the tinted glass of my driver's side window. He reverted instantly to his baseline state of aggressive entitlement and sheer panic. He loudly demanded I hand over the master administrative passwords immediately to save his legacy. He arrogantly claimed he still owned my technical labor because of his initial historical financial investment. He did not know my private artificial intelligence company was currently valued at $800 million. He was begging for scraps while standing before an absolute technological titan. The formal corporate acquisition hearing commenced on Thursday at 10:15 in the morning. My father's traditional accounting firm was entirely bankrupt after the systemic network failure. He had officially submitted a desperate application for a lucrative buyout to my venture capital division. He demanded a public presentation in our primary glass boardroom on the 40th floor. Sure, he expected to intimidate my board of directors, using his standard aggressive executive posturing. He still did not understand I was the chief executive officer of the acquiring entity. I sat quietly at the head of the polished obsidian table. He walked into the room, flanked by my mother and two junior legal associates. Have you ever watched a deeply manipulative person realize their false reality is collapsing in real time? Tell me about your most satisfying public victory in the comments below. He began his desperate financial pitch by projecting a fabricated ledger onto the primary display matrix. He claimed his legacy firm possessed a verified valuation of $14.2 million. He stated his wealthy client portfolio was a highly secure and exceptionally profitable asset. I did not allow him to finish his completely fraudulent corporate presentation. I retrieved the hardened titanium solid-state drive from my leather briefcase. I inserted the encrypted device into the master terminal and initiated a manual presentation override. The 85-inch monitor instantly illuminated with the raw exported SQL database queries. I methodically highlighted the $114,000 Porsche 911 deduction. I publicly detailed his flagrant abuse of Federal Tax Code Section 179. I projected the exact international routing numbers for his Cayman Islands offshore holding company. The 32 executive investors in the room stopped breathing simultaneously. The ambient noise level dropped to an absolute zero. I addressed the board using a perfectly flat and mathematically calibrated vocal inflection. I formally stated that acquiring this toxic asset would constitute active participation in felony tax evasion. My father's face lost all structural integrity and turned a sickening shade of gray. His two junior legal associates immediately stood up and exited the boardroom to avoid criminal implication. My mother dropped her imported leather handbag onto the acoustic carpet. My father desperately tried to scream that the digital receipts were fabricated by a disgruntled child. He claimed the data was manipulated to destroy his sterling professional reputation. I calmly reminded him that our internal blockchain ledgers utilize immutable cryptographic hashes. I informed the entire room that the Federal Fraud Division already possessed read access to these exact server logs. The silence in the corporate boardroom was heavy and completely devastating. He finally realized his entire 50-year professional legacy was permanently destroyed. It took exactly 6 minutes to execute the complete demolition of his arrogant financial empire. He staggered backward until his spine hit the reinforced glass wall. I looked directly into his panicked eyes and slowly closed my lightweight metallic laptop. The absolute victory was secured. The federal execution of the warrant occurred at exactly 0700 hours on a Tuesday. I monitored the entire localized event through the encrypted municipal traffic camera network. 12 armed tactical agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation breached his corporate lobby. They carried specialized aluminum cases designed specifically for rapid digital asset extraction. The physical seizure of his remaining legacy hardware took approximately 47 minutes. They dismantled the heavy metal server racks using industrial-grade power tools. My father was legally detained in the main atrium wearing a wrinkled silk bathrobe. He was formally charged with 17 distinct counts of aggressive corporate wire fraud. The systemic financial collapse cascaded through his personal portfolio by noon. The Securities and Exchange Commission initiated an immediate and total asset freeze. His primary wealth management accounts were completely locked behind federal administrative holds. The bank holding the mortgage on my childhood home triggered an automatic default clause. The clause was strictly activated by his verified inclusion on a federal indictment registry. My mother received the formal foreclosure notice via certified legal courier at 1300 hours. She was forced to vacate the luxury property within an incredibly strict 72-hour window. She packed 3 designer suitcases and relocated to a cheap motel near the interstate. His premier legal defense team abandoned his case almost immediately after the asset freeze. The senior partners at the defense firm required a mandatory $300,000 retainer. His frozen bank accounts generated an insufficient funds error during the initial wire transfer. He was assigned an overworked public defender, lacking complex financial litigation experience. His carefully constructed social reputation disintegrated with terrifying mathematical precision. The local country club revoked his exclusive legacy membership via a cold automated email. His wealthy golf partners immediately publicly severed all previous financial ties to his failing firm. The local news syndicate published a massive digital exposé detailing his offshore shell corporations. They heavily cited the exact database queries I provided to the Federal Fraud Division. He was completely stripped of his certified public accountant license by the state regulatory board. He was no longer a feared traditional corporate titan ruling a vast financial empire. So he was an exposed mathematical anomaly awaiting inevitable federal prison sentencing. I watched the localized news broadcast on my secondary high-definition monitor. The absolute destruction of his toxic ecosystem was finally legally secured. I am sitting in my ergonomic Herman Miller Aeron chair. The ambient temperature of my executive office is exactly 68.5 degrees. I am observing the real-time analytics dashboard of my primary artificial intelligence model. The global server load is currently operating at an optimal 42% capacity. The physical hardware of my past has been completely permanently replaced. You cannot optimize a biological system that is fundamentally corrupted by narcissistic entropy. My father believed power was derived from aggressive intimidation and sheer vocal volume, so he never understood that true power is entirely quiet and mathematically absolute. The structural system always corrects itself when you remove the artificial emotional variables. I do not feel any lingering resentment toward his complete and total structural collapse. Resentment is a highly inefficient processing loop that severely degrades overall cognitive performance. He is currently waiting inside a cold federal holding facility. I'm currently evaluating a new predictive algorithm for the massive European financial market. The operational distance between our two distinct realities is now permanently infinite and secure. Before this specific audio file permanently closes, I have one final direct question. What was the exact mathematical moment you stopped arguing and quietly built your exit strategy? Tell me your absolute analytical breaking point in the comments section below. My closed digital ecosystem is flawlessly secure and operating within strict optimal parameters. My professional legacy is safely encoded directly into immutable and scalable binary architecture. The toxic baseline variables have been completely isolated and permanently deleted from my internal servers. I will never return to the obsolete analog hardware of my past. The future is fully optimized and completely silent.